Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of This Valorant Life. In this episode, Adam and I are in our second last map of this series. We're doing Split. Bind is last. I'm sorry. We love you, Bind, but the people have spoken. So we're going to start with Split. Adam, with Split, I want to talk about maybe one thing first, which is just it's kind of like the opposite of Breeze, in that Breeze is super wide open. And so we were talking about how even the Marshall has, extra value on Breeze. Split is kind of the opposite. So how does that affect the gun value?
Yeah, I mean, super straightforward here. I think the close range angles, just you want to buy a lot of shotguns, Judge, Bucky, Shorty even. I would even advise, even on gun rounds, for you to buy a pocket Shorty. I remember watching this VOD way back when, I want to say like 6 months ago, where Nats would buy on gun round, he would buy a Shorty and he would just jump around in mid, and that's all he did. Like he was okay with just jumping through smokes with a shotgun. And it was pretty ridiculous to see, but he had a lot of success with it. And this kind of takes me back to like PRX something's play style, where he'll kind of like throw a jet smoke, pull out a shotgun, and then jump into it.
Yeah.
I think you can do that very reasonably on any agent on Split, just because like the mid fight is just so close quarters. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely love the shotguns on that map and hate them.
And so then how does this affect? I mean, of course, on a buy round, if you've got the money, like if you're going to play a close range, you could judge. Um, what about Phantom Vandal? Because of the spraying and the smokes and the close range, does this really advantage the Phantom on this map relative to the Vandal?
I believe so. There's two maps that I buy the Phantom on, like almost exclusively, and it's Bind and Split. And then occasionally I'll buy the Phantom on Defense Ascent if I'm playing towards A. I think there's just a lot of spots on Split and specifically that you might as well just have the Phantom for.
Mhm.
And like you mentioned, the smoke spraying. This is probably one of the most smoke heavy spraying maps in general, right? Like B main, it's a pretty long corridor, and you're gonna smoke and spam that. Same with mid. There's just a lot of good spam spots in mid, and then of course A as well. So like that, the choke points are just really good for spamming. So yeah, definitely buy the Phantom on Split. You can maybe make the argument that you could buy the Vandal for like attack rounds, but to be honest, I think consistency wise, you're probably looking at the Phantom.
Adam, the next question I had for you was just around the Spectre. Then, like, obviously, if you can afford a Phantom, you're gonna buy a Phantom. But does that make the Spectre a more viable gun for kind of those like half buy rounds?
I would say so. Like, I would probably favor the Spectre over, say, the Bulldog or the Guardian, for example, for
Yeah,
that
yeah,
round two buy.
yeah.
Um, if I'm like on a super low buy, but my teammates are buying, I might buy like the Judge or even the Bucky over the Spectre.
And just help people to play in a different position so you can play like
Exactly.
Heaven
Yeah.
or something like that.
Just switch it out. The Spectre obviously is a great gun, but I prefer the Stinger, to be honest. If I'm gonna buy the SMG, I'll just buy the Stinger.
So let's get into the map then. We're gonna start with just talking about like what's the general comp for this map.
Man, there's so many good comps.
Okay.
There's the double controller route. There's the double controller with Senti route. I guess we'll try to start with the most basic, I guess. So let's say Raze. Raze is very popular. I want to put Omen here as well. We do want to throw in a Cypher, and I also want to throw in a Sky. So after that, you kind of are looking at a bunch of flexes, right? You have potentially Jet, you have potentially Viper, you have maybe even like a Brimstone in there. Some people play Gecko. So the fifth pick is hard to get to a formula because a lot of different teams play different formulas.
If we just talk through the different roles, then Raze is pretty straightforward. Just the nade is super powerful.
Correct.
The satchels perform the same aspect as the jet dash, but I just think that the util for Raze is just so much more impactful on this map than Jet.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And then Omen as the smoker, I guess, is because I actually don't know why would he be the preferred smoke agent over like an Astra or someone else.
So, I mean, I guess quickly touching on Astra, she's very good. You could probably play her on every map. But the reason why Omen is so powerful is simply the blind, right? So the split blinds or blinds to hold on defense. You can see like the choke points are very narrow. So the blinds are very good.
So it's just the power of his blinds. And then I think, when I see Cypher and Viper, they often on attack are both playing the same position. They're playing this kind of a lurk, either using the cipher cages or the Viper wall. So I was kind of thinking they're kind of like a similar agent. But is that your thinking too, or am I getting that wrong?
I would say you're right. The Viper is like a better cipher in
Yeah.
a way because but the reason why people actually play Cypher and Viper is just to have the tripwires.
Mm,
And since Split is very defense oriented and it's a slow map in general, you will oftentimes see the comp just be double controller plus a Senti.
mhm,
And this is probably like one of the best comps in the game.
mhm,
But in ranked, you're probably more looking at it where you got either get the Cypher or the Viper,
mhm.
and like you said, they kind of fill in that same A conditioning role.
Interestingly enough, I think this year in VCT, Split has been attack sided.
Really?
And I actually don't know why, because historically it's been one of the most defense-sided maps, and nothing has really changed in terms of geometry of the map. I just wonder if it's because of the move towards like a lot of. I'm not sure if this is true. I know at the beginning of the season we're seeing lots of double duelist. I don't think we're seeing it as much anymore. But for whatever reason, I think it's still tilted a little towards attack side, which, based on the geometry of the map, is kind of surprising.
Yeah, that is pretty surprising. Maybe my guess would be if attackers can control mid, and I would assume in VCT attackers do control mid, your rotates between A and B are quicker than defenders rotates.
Yeah.
So on that sense, you might give an edge towards attackers.
Mhm.
But yeah, I know Sentinels is dominating on that map, so
Yep.
maybe I would have to dissect that a little bit more.
Tens go kill, or Zekin go kill.
Yeah.
Now that we talked about the typical comp, what would is this a map where you would default?
Yes. So very simple. Everyone knows mid is impactful,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a brief conversation before. A lot of people actually don't go mid because they don't know how to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll teach you. Very simple, right? Instead of smoking ropes like everyone does,
Yes.
the rope smoke is a bait, because if you do go up mid, then this guy can potentially jump out of the rope smoke and then shoot you in the back
Yes.
and then get away, especially if it's like a Jet or a Reyna. So the only reason why people do rope smoke is typically to block off the op angle, which used to be very popular, right? But the easy solution to all of this is smoke mail, take ropes first, and then you just throw a bunch of util at the rope sky to push off the op. So that could be in the form of, say, a sky dog or a sky flash. Doesn't really matter. Typically, your sky will start the round with the flash, kind of get into one of these corners and then dog up if they need to.
Yeah.
But occasionally you will just start the round with the dog. Doesn't really matter. Point being, smoke mail, use util to take ropes. Now that you have taken ropes, you don't get shot by that guy in the back anymore,
Mhm.
and then you can go back and re-clear B main if you want to. This unfortunately in ranked means that it's going to be a slower round, right?
Yeah.
So in that scenario, you do kind of want to spread out a little bit more. So because you won't be able to insta take mid, you're going to take ropes, wait for the mail smoke, and then take mail.
Yeah.
So in that case, you do kind of want your Cypher to spread out towards A, Cypher Viper towards A, and then you might have, say, your Omen or someone kind of hold the B push while your three players take mid.
I see. Okay.
That's typically going to be the most common. Yeah.
And so you would probably, I'm thinking, once you've taken ropes, you're probably leaving someone behind in ropes as you scale up for B, or like, is that kind of the kind of, or you would just actually decide from here based on what you're hearing from your teammates in B main and A main as well, like where to go?
Yeah, honestly, that's a tough decision, whether or not to leave an insert
Okay.
in mid and then regroup into one of the mains.
Okay.
So for example, if we left, let's just say we left a Jet here, for example. If we left a Jet, you could theoretically send 3 towards B main and then just do a B split with the late mid guy. Maybe the Cypher / Viper would come back. You could do that. I would say the more common outcome is these guys mid fight whoever they fight, and then if they get the kill, say in heaven, then the Omen slowly creeps up, and then they do a B split with the heavy mid numbers. So that's the more common outcome in ranked. Though I do think your approach to leave the insert and then either go back to main and regroup or something like that is the higher success rate. Typically, if I'm like hard IGLing a ranked game, that's what I'll call is I'll do a little bit of mid pressure and then I'll just shift walk back to A or back to B and just pop. instead of splitting from mid, because you do have a little bit more contact points in mid, which might introduce more variables. So
Okay.
yeah.
So let's talk about B then. If you're in this position, you're executing on B. What does an ideal execute look like? Where are the positions you're looking for players? And maybe if we can get into this if you don't answer it right away, but it's just like, how do we, because it feels like the scariest parts of hitting B are dealing with, oh my gosh, that is the worst circle. But like, I'm trying to circle heaven. Like, B is scary there, and it's scary like coming out here. So how do you handle
Yeah.
those as you execute on B?
Yeah, so I guess there's two B execute variations. You either have the B main exec, just like 4 or 5 man,
Yeah.
or you have the straight up B split. So let's try to unpack both. Let's start with B main. So if we're doing like let's just say a contact B or just a fast B, we're all going to be in main, maybe with a potential lurk or something like that. Your util normally will look like heaven smoke, backside smoke, and then if you have omen, you will be blinding hell and back pillar, kind of like
Do you
this.
need to aim that up at all so it can hit people on like rafters there?
I think yes, but I'm gonna be honest, I never do. I gotta just aim it straight.
Okay.
I'm
sure there's like a lineup or something.
Yeah, there's probably something better.
Okay.
But yeah, you do throw the blind here,
Okay.
and then typically with your sky and rays, you're going to be kind of util dumping the entrance. So flash, skydog, whatever. And the skydog typically trails towards this way to clear the guy back sight. Your raise nade will also typically be either here or close for the trip. But most of the time you'll see it deep because the skydog will break the close one.
If I'm looking at where people are, like where we're trying to like kind of get people from their position, let's use ISO because no one plays ISO. Like I'm thinking someone there, there's usually someone there, there's heaven, and then there's often like a hell player or kind of back pillar. Are those kind of like the main positions we're trying to deal with?
Yep, I might make an amendment from this back pillar guy to like maybe rafter.
Okay.
A lot of people like this rafter angle because that's like a rotator position.
Yeah.
But you are correct. This is kind of the spot, and then these 3 players on the right typically end up a little bit more forward at some point towards here, right? Like they kind of drop in. So
yeah, once they get smoked off.
Exactly. So as you can see, the left side is just 2 easy spots to clear. Well, maybe the deep ISO is harder to clear, but he's not as much of a threat if you kind of util to stall him. So what you want to be thinking about on the execute is, okay, let me deal with this close right guy first. I'll draw a line actually. Your first danger point is like this line. That's a terrible line, but you get the point.
Yes.
It's like this crossfire essentially. So skydog to clear close left. You might even sky flash, and then you want to be insta looking heaven / hell. If you have the heaven smoked, then of course you would just look hell, and then maybe rafters for that little tidbit. And as soon as you get past that, that's like your first danger zone. You're pretty good to go. And then after that, the next crossfire that you're thinking about is back sight with the rafters player, like this area. And in this situation, this is where it's important for you to kind of time the omen blinds, or if you have another sky flash, you would use it here just so you can kind of isolate one of these players.
It's a question for you. This is like kind of getting into mechanics, but because actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really know what I do or what's optimal. Are you peeking this heaven angle? Like, let's say you've cleared a left, close left, and now you're swinging heaven. You're going like this. Are you peeking close to this wall, like that, or are you peeking in the middle, or are you peeking in the back?
So if I'm contacting, I'll 100% do it from the back.
Okay.
Because you have a slightly better angle.
Yeah.
If I have, say, util, or I'm like just going fast and I'm okay with going close, right? Like if the omen blind plus sky flash is combo together, then I might just go close and that'll give me the timing to actually go like this path on the right. Okay. And I will occasionally do that as a duelist instead of routing towards backside.
So you can pinch.
I will rather go right side so you can pinch, exactly. And it's kind of elusive. You would think this new box area, this box here, feels dangerous. It's not really that dangerous actually, because the player that it would be dangerous to is either the hell player or the heaven player. but the heaven player is smoked, and the hell player is going to be blind, or he's going to be a little bit uncomfortable fighting your teammates as well.
Okay.
So new box is very good, and yeah, for that reason, I might peek from the close wall just to get there quicker.
And then maybe the last thing I'm seeing is as you're exacting on site, as you're kind of routing and everyone's flooding onto site, and you're looking heaven, like here, I think you would be looking this way. What do you do to prevent this guy from swinging you? It's just you would just throw a nade or util dump him, or what do you like? What would you be using in your kit here to be managing that? Or are you just having someone hold that angle?
Yeah, so I mean, you can't really have the player hold because typically there's going to be like a one-way cage that comes up or a smoke. If you could have that as your option, that would be a good option.
Okay.
That typically works well on Breeze, for example, because you don't get smoked off A main that often. But unfortunately, that doesn't work here. So sometimes your raise will, instead of nading right side towards default, will nade on the left, and that can kind of give you that breathing room a little bit. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. Other than that, you don't really see util use that well to kind of block off that angle.
Okay.
Maybe if you're in like a really high level game, you might have like a jet smoke there as like the jet is dashing out, and that gives you that like second window.
Okay.
But other than that, it's you kind of just I know this doesn't sound good, but you're kind of just praying.
Yeah.
You know,
that this guy isn't really good and takes that
there.
timing. Because that timing is also really scary too. Because like I'm saying that he's going to time it perfectly, we're all looking heaven. But if he times it too early, he's just staring at four of us looking at him, and he just gets demolished. So
that spot is really good though for defense, because maybe we'll talk about this when we flip over to defense. But just to kind of talk about it real quick, this off angle that this player can play back here can hold the kind of, you see the sky. He has the sight line on the sky right now.
Oh wow.
So he can get the kill on the sky and then immediately peek out and probably catch his second player off guard. And then, you know, if he's Reyna, he can just dismiss and stay alive. Or if he has a cage in front of him, this is coming for anchors. They'll have a cage here and stay alive. So yeah, it's a very tough position to deal with. Fortunately, this little box here is spammable. So sometimes you'll see people just spam bullets at the start and kind of make that player play a little bit more scared. But other times, yeah, you're just honestly hoping he's not very good. Okay. Yeah, I know that's not a great solution, but the Heaven Flood and the Hell player and the backside, like back pillar player, honestly causes more issues more oftentimes than not, because there's going to be more players rotating there.
Okay. So. All right. Is there anything different when you? So that's the kind of the heavy B main exec. What about is there? How does it look when you're doing the B split?
Oh, right. The B split. So typically on a B split, you're going to be heavy mid and just one late B main. So let me clear the util here. Let's just assume we're doing it fast, just for simplicity's sake. We smoke ropes, and then we're just all running a mid. I know we talked about the rope smoke before, but this is probably what happens most elos anyways, is you smoke mid, your omen goes here, he blinds this thing, and then he either smokes stairs or spawn. Quickly going into which one is better, I would prefer the stair smoke because this is where the rotators typically go. It's the shorter rotate compared to spawn. So smoke here. The omen will then go late towards B main after the blinds while everyone else is kind of just running through mid. And at this point, if your raise is good, they will bounce the nade off of this wall to land hell to make that easier to clear. And then your sky will be flashing out. I guess I went a little bit too quick here. One thing I forgot to mention is at the start of the round, your sky either might flash or dog or both to kind of follow up into B heaven. And then the omen blind is timed off of the sky dog. So that's a pretty important piece there. And then while that sky dog and blind is going up, your other teammates are scaling with it. And then they probably do a typical pause here because the enemy players are either counter utiling, fighting it, or they just want to wait for the sky blind. So a little bit of a pause here. That also gives your omen time to take B main. And then as the util is coming out, raise nade, sky flash, typically you have multiple players scale rafters with one or two players dropping hell. And then they fight the spawn guy together. And then this guy B main peaks really, really late, waiting for contact on the guy pillar. Because typically what happens on the defender side is if they're getting B split, they like to reposition either here or here. So the Omen here is trying to kill the pillar player,
Yeah.
but he's not peeking too early because if he dies, then this guy can stay alive.
Mhm.
So Omen's baiting the team here. Let's say Raze dies to the Cypher. Then Omen will peek, kill the Cypher, and then the rest of the execute should be pretty clean.
Got it.
This I would say is your standard B split. But this is, of course, with the assumption that we did the male smoke instead of the male smoke. But if you did the male smoke and then you did ropes first and then you did the same thing, you just wouldn't have the rope smoke and you might have a secondary smoke here. Yeah. All the other details are pretty much the same.
Easy peasy. Let's move over to A then. And I guess for A specifically, how important is heaven? Like, is
Ooh, okay.
do you
so
feel like,
that's
I think that's like a nuanced thing. Like, because sometimes you'll smoke off heaven and you'll smoke off, you can smoke off ramps and then you can just take, or I guess you wouldn't do that. You'd probably do this screens. But like you just kind of take A without actually taking any heaven control. Other times you split heaven and you try to take heaven control, either smoking there or maybe even smoking there. I don't know. But how do you think through that as you're hitting A?
Man, that's such a good question. I would say in the ideal scenario, you would actually take heaven first during your execute. When you watch Sentinels or really high VCT level stuff, is their round start, their A control is to start with a heaven control. And then they'll like occupy this space up here, wait whatever until the util comes back up and then hit A again. And the reason why they can do this is because if they control heaven, they control the rotates, right? So it actually doesn't even matter if defenders know that they're all A because they can't assist their teammates, right? Because they're contested. So then they just wait for the util to come back up and then go for like a two-step execute into A site. And when I first saw Sentinels do, I was like, oh my god, that's genius. But I will say this is the more ideal approach and it works really well. You'll see people do it on Sunset, but you can't really replicate that in ranked.
Or coordination.
Yeah, more coordination. You have to insert a pause in there. You might even want to have a lurker to control mid space. It's just too much effort. So the more common approach in ranked, and it still works pretty well, is just a straight up A rush. So you have the double smokes here. If you have a raise, you want to bounce the nade off of barrier instantly to land roughly here to break the trips. After that, or I guess at the exact same timing, your Sky will be dogging out, and then Raze will be satcheling towards site once she peaks. Double satchel, boop, boop. And then normally she either lands here or here. Preference, really. But most of the time I see people land here. And if you do have an Omen after he does both smokes, you do want to ask for the blind for backside just to make your Raze's life a little bit easier, especially for that corner.
Which corner? This back right corner? Oh, yeah, the
yes,
tuck corner.
Yeah, the Benji Fishy corner.
Yeah.
He has some insane split holds on that corner. So that's typically your
Like
A
right
execute.
there. Okay.
Yeah, so good. It's so good. So occasionally your Raze or your Jet will entry towards elbow. So they'll double satchel or dash towards here. And then they'll pinch sight by going like this. I think that's completely viable as well. It's really just how you're feeling in the moment, or based on what read you have.
As you're doing this, how are you managing ramp? Like that a defender is like going to maybe possibly peek you or try to take this angle and catch this cross?
That's a very good question. So let's go ahead and throw Sky and Jet onto the site in this example because their focus is on site. And ramp control is actually your smoke and your Sentinel problem. So I'll just kind of overlap Cypher and Viper here because they kind of do the same thing. But they're working together in most cases to stop that ramp player from getting value, right? So if you do have a Cypher, the way I see Nats do it is he'll actually just double cage ramp.
Okay.
So normally you see the cages spread out between main and ramp when you're conditioning for lurks. But if you're going for a fast execute, you could get away with doing double cage here, and that just gives you a little bit more time to work with to focus on site.
I see.
If you're playing Viper, similar thing, except you're just doing the orb instead, and then you're kind of hovering around. Just take a look at the Viper and the Cypher here. You're hovering around between these two positions to hold your cage and your orb while your teammates take the site. And then ideally, if they aren't getting heavy contested, they will plant for heaven.
Yeah.
In which case, some of the players from site will come back, regroup with your ramp player to kind of go through the cage once it's expired, or maybe the Sky will come through and actually flash through before it has expired to take ramp control. and win the round that way by taking heaven. Other times they
Like late wrap heaven.
correct.
Would you be fighting heaven, or would you want to late wrap heaven?
So I guess that's a good distinction to make. If you're really active about it, you can't just fight it with like your entire team, maybe leaving one player on site. If like let's say you got a really clean site take and they're all playing retake, it's 5v5. You probably just want to like knife out, run back to ramp, and then fight it as a squad, right? But let's say it's like a 3v3 situation, and then players died on site. Like let's get rid of, I don't know, those numbers. I guess you have one player on site, you have two people late. These people might just play really late, trade out and go up late. Like let the enemy team execute on the site, and then they'll kind of just work up late and then play the bomb from heaven, because it's pretty easy to spam here and win the post. So yeah. That's your most common standard execute in an ideal way. And honestly, it's a little bit elusive and contradictory, but I call more A rushes than I do in rank, or than I do mid defaults in ranked, because I feel like I can make the A execute work more than the mid default, because I need the trip, I call for the util, and I know that heaven is such a power position, so I convert a lot of A rushes. One asterisk I want to add to the A rush, and let me delete the util, is occasionally I will ask to fast take ramps, right? So the easy way to do this, Omen blind with sky blind, or just one or the other, and then I would just double satchel over with the flashes, and I'll take the initial fight here, and then I'll go back and take site, just to, like, if I don't trust my Cypher cage, or if I want to get that early kill, then I will go up there and try to do that. And if I do get the early kill, I might even go forward and take heaven, but most of the time I'll kind of just sit here or fall back and go back to site. But yeah, it's worth noting that that's a very common split play. You just have to kind of get a good feel for when to call for it and when to do it, because if you do it every round, it's kind of troll. If you never do it, it's also kind of troll. It's just good to mix it in there.
Okay. Let's move over to, actually, so on eco, is there anything you would do specifically on eco?
Oh, this is pretty cool. So if you have the Cypher wall, or sorry, Viper wall or the Cypher cages, you can even do this on pistol round. Works very good. You send everyone A, but instead of going site, you go up A ramp. And then you could even do that satchel thing that we just talked about with the flash. But instead of going through ramp, you just go into rope and then go through B. And ideally, you have like one mid player that this entire time that's kind of just like waiting here, listening for noise. So if your Cypher's throwing A cages, it might have to be your Omen.
So you're really just trying to catch this
like,
guy or a couple people, maybe like rotating like this, trying quick.
Exactly. And if you get those kills, you're probably going to win the round, because the A rotate's going to be so late that you could probably push up into here. It's pretty brutal. I've lost to it a few times, and people in ranked are so greedy for ecos that they rotate through mid thinking that they're quick. And they just get clapped. So
nice. Okay, I love it.
Right here.
Let's flip over to defenses. Is there anything else that you feel like we haven't touched on attack?
Just real quick, I guess, plant spots. If you can plant open, do plant open, because the mid wrap is very, very good. If you can't plant open on A,
because if you plant there on B,
in this corner,
if you plant there on B, on ally, you can hit that guy from there or there, and that's pretty powerful.
Correct.
So the late wrap mid is super powerful.
Yep. And then the second best A plants in this corner, if you can avoid planting here or here. When I say here or here, let me get rid of these two, because it's hard to.
Why is that? Where can you see? Can you see that corner from here?
You can see that corner from. Yeah, I think you can see it from hell, but you can see it like when you peek main. So it at least gives your ramp player a chance to win the round. Yeah.
Okay. So what would be a typical setup on defense?
I guess it's pretty straightforward. You have your anchors on either site. So your Cypher could play A or your Cypher could play B. I guess we'll kind of quickly walk through both. So if Cypher's playing A, they typically trip like this, and potentially a ramp trip with the cage here, and then camera on this wall typically, or the aggro cam, doesn't really matter. And then your Omen will play B with the smoke here, and then he'll jump spot and then blind when they come out. So this is typically your A and B anchor setup. You could easily flip this to where Omen's doing the exact same thing elbow with the blind smoke here, or he's doing it closer. He might aggro smoke at the start just to keep the lurker from going through. And then you have your Cypher sorry, you have your Cypher playing B with the one way, with the trip here, and potentially a trip in mid or a heaven trip or something. So Cypher and Omen can flip flop. That's not really the important part of this setup. Well, actually, it kind of is. I think my Vela plan crashed. Let me refresh. Okay, yeah, I'm back. Yeah, that is the important part. I guess you do want your Omen and Cypher to be A or B.
Yeah.
But aside from that, everything else is pretty fluid. You might have like a round where your Jet wants to peek ramp, or I guess we'll consider Raze. Like Raze might play A with the nade. He might play ramp. He might play mid. You know, your Sky might be spotting A for info with the Sky Flash and then rotate mid, or he might start A. It just depends on, I guess, if you want to fight A or fight mid. And you'll rarely fight B, but I guess since I'm talking about it, if you do want to fight B, one-way smoke here, Omen goes here, blinds, and then Raze can bounce nade off wall if they go through. But not too common. You'll typically fight A. So
how are you fighting
I'm
A usually? Off ramp.
Yeah. Okay, good question. So close smoke. And then Omen might have blind out. He might jiggle first and then pull out blind. And then Raze will nade off of wall here to land it here. So you're essentially fighting the orb, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, where are the positions around it? Because it feels like these positions, especially when you get smoked off ropes and they're going heaven, if they're like routing like this, it feels like pretty terrible to get caught in this rope smoke.
Yeah, so man, there's a lot more nuance than I thought, but you're alluding to, ropes is very useless if you're late to ropes, right? So in other words, if you want to actually have an effective ropes impact, you either have to start ropes or you have to get there really quickly.
Okay.
Right. So this will typically be your Raze or your Sky.
Yeah.
Because Sky likes to start A, flash, goes ropes.
Yeah.
Or your Raze will start A with the nade, rotate, go ropes. Right. So in both of those instances, you have to be really quick. Right. So let's say like the round starts, Sky flashes, sees nothing, insta rotate ropes. And then if your teammate is delaying, say they smoked mid to delay, then your Sky has a chance to contest with the B Heaven player, whoever that B Heaven player may be. Let's just say it's a Jet for now. Then they can kind of go through and kind of fight that with the contact off of the Jet, right? If they're too late and they're already up and then your Jet's dead, this Sky has no chance. It's just too late. So it's really important you're quick. Really quickly, because I watch a lot of Jing VODs and this is so common for him. He'll start ramps as Raze, jump spot from like he'll get on the box, jump spot main, see nothing, and then he'll rotate ropes and he'll make it, right? So it's a very sensitive timing. If you go for 2 jump spots, you're probably too late.
Okay.
Or if you go for a jump spot and then wait, you're still too late.
Okay.
So and this is of course with the idea that they're just rushing mid super fast, right?
Are you ever trying to play this crossfire
really
like next to this box here?
Oh, so that crossfire is super good if you have a Viper. I don't know for whatever reason, but the Viper makes it just work so much better. So for whatever the case, if you are playing a Viper in the comp, I will see Vipers kind of like put the orb up, molly, and then kind of walk out and then play the crossfire.
Got it.
Otherwise, that crossfire kind of is a death sentence to play at the start because of the Sky Dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you can kind of get rid of the Sky Dog, put up the orb, and then walk out after, it's pretty good.
Okay. So that's kind of the default positions. How are you thinking about rotates? You know, on this site, the rotate is really advantageous through mid. It's really disadvantageous. So this rotate is great. This rotate kind of sucks. So like, how are you thinking about controlling mid? Is it okay to give it up and you're just going to try to fast rotate through spawn? Or are you really trying to fight for mid so that you can kind of maintain control here and you can continue to make this fast rotate?
Both are viable options, and let me start with the contesting mid first. So if you can, like let's say like the other team is just losing the mid fight, or you can actually fight for it, then you should, because obviously you gain the huge benefit of denying them this rotate, and also you gain access to that rotate. So if you can get it, great, you should. But if you're just losing the mid fight, or like your comp isn't ideal and like they have more util, then it's okay. It's completely okay to give ropes, and then you kind of play for B Heaven instead, and then you'll play the safer rotate and kind of just hold the ramp passively, where you're kind of watching the, I guess, rope lurk / ramp lurk at the same time. So it's completely okay because both of these chokes kind of come together in one point, and you can invest one player there. So holding B heaven really is the more important thing, because the B split is kind of crucial to at least contest B heaven a little bit. So yeah, it's completely okay to fall back, play the more passive rotate, but if you can, play for the more aggressive rotate.
Got it. And how do you think about, so let's talk about A then. How are you defending the A rush, and how are you thinking about the retake?
Oh, okay. So let's start with the A rush. So it depends on your agents, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just leave the omen B, cipher A, because I feel like this is going to be the most common.
Sure.
You want to have some form of smoke denial, vision denial on the choke. So cage, smoke, whatever. And then if your raise is there, you're pretty golden. So if your raise is playing A, he just throws the nade either on the choke or a little bit deeper, and then that kind of just contesting that. And again, golden. Most of the time what ends up happening when the cage plus need comes up is they'll come up ramp. And in which case you're okay to just give them ramp. You don't have to full fight it. The raise can kind of fall back to rafters, and then the rotator will come in here, and then kind of just play off of each other when the enemy team pushes into this area here. Okay. But until they kind of push up into this area, you don't really have to take it too aggressively.
So you're not kind of trying to take, because I think I often die trying to like take this fight, like trying to fight them there, and it just feels really bad. But what I'm hearing here is if they're there, you just leave them there because they're kind of trapped.
So there's one nuance to it, which I'll just add, is I'll see Jing. Is it Jing? Yeah, Jing will nade main, force him into ramp, and then he'll swing rafters and specifically isolate this angle, because you see the slant here? This slant allows him to kind of isolate that fight against the deadlock. Whereas like if that slant didn't exist and he swung, he would have been open potentially to more angles. Right?
Got it.
But because that slant exists, he can actually go for a wide swing, but he's only looking for the fight for the player behind the box.
Got it.
If he ends up going a little bit wider and starts fighting the players coming up the ramp, then you will die and you don't want to take that fight. So I guess maybe the more common situation that would happen is if the sky were to rotate here, the sky should not be swinging into the ramp player, but the raise can swing into the deadlock behind the box because of that slant.
Let me just point out something that it's interesting on this map, and just in general as like a play pattern, is like everyone knows what their next ability could be or should be. Like everyone's kind of thinking one step ahead, but there's real power in actually having like a 2 or 3 step combo, right? Like what you're talking about with Jing specifically nading to push them up ramp, and then specifically swinging this kind of advantageous angle because of the angled wall for one fight. It's like a 2 or 3 step combo in like, I don't know, a fighting game or something. And same thing with mid, like pushing up, smoking off male, taking ropes, and then going B. Like this 1 or 2 step, this like 2 step combo or this 2 step method is like really powerful, and it just allows you to open up a lot of opportunities that otherwise don't appear if you're only thinking 1 step at a time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of feel like maybe that's what hinders a lot of people from getting better. Even like clients that I've worked with that are like Immortal 3 players, they play very surface level. They're like, I like this fight. If I can get that fight, I win it. But then they don't know like how often that fight comes up, or like how to force that fight.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a huge separator between Immortal players and Radiant players, for example.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up. I think it's super important.
Maybe the last one would be B. How are you defending the B execute, and how you think about the retake?
Okay, so maybe we'll talk about general and then quickly refer it back to raise, because I feel like I know a little bit more about the raise.
Sure.
So generally, if your omen is playing here, you're not really contesting B main, right? So you need to get info when they're kind of coming up. So typically your jump spot. As soon as he gets info, he's gonna smoke, and then he's gonna have blind out. This is kind of akin to the Ascent hold.
Yeah.
And then you blind, and then you can test. You try to get one, you might re-smoke mid-sight, whatever. But the goal generally is to contest the choke like in this little square here.
Yeah.
Rectangle, whatever. And if you can kind of keep them there, then your B hold's gonna be insane, right? But as soon as they start like making out of that, and then like they push past this rectangle to go pinch loot box, or they actually make it past here, that's where you start running into issues. So With that, a lot of times you'll see omens on defense or ciphers smoke here to get rid of that potential threat to push through,
Yeah.
right? And then all of defenders can now focus on the left arrow.
Yeah.
And then going into that little raise thing I was telling you about, typically Jing will rotate ropes, like we said. But if he notices it's a B rush, he will rotate spawn. And then if he's quick enough, he might invest a satchel. Or if his B player is delayed long enough, he'll make it here to where he can throw the nade where that smoke is. And if the smoke doesn't exist, he might throw it a little bit deeper. And that gives him timing to now swap places where this omen is and then swing. And then, again, keep them in that square. So there's a lot of ways to do it, depending on your agent and what you want to do. But that's the idea of the behold. You want to keep them as far back as you can and deny as much space as you can.
And then let's say they've planted. How are you thinking about the retake?
So the retake's hard.
Is
really
B harder
hard,
than
to
A?
be honest, but
I feel like it's harder than A.
yes. It's harder than A. So I guess that's something we didn't talk about. So maybe to illustrate why A is easier than B is you could retake from screens, from heaven, and from ramp. And ideally, the two ones that you want to prioritize is screens and ramp. And then you might have one player heaven just for like a suppressing fire type of thing. You don't have that for B, right? You only have spawn and you only have heaven. If you flank B main, then you have a really good B retake opportunity. But flanking B is, as you can see, very difficult because this is like a long push right here, or if you're pushing all the way through A. So that's very difficult to pull off in general to flank B main. But if you can, your B retake looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're going from heaven, your concerns, in my opinion, would be the pillar spot, right?
Yep.
Like here, these guys tend to swing you as you're like playing heaven.
Yep.
Let me change these to red, actually. So you have the pillar players and then the back right players. And then typically you will have a player in the smoke kind of just ready to swing too.
Yeah.
So you can see pillar is like the spot where people can play, like the back site player and the B main player can play off of the pillar player.
Yep.
And that's really uncomfortable to deal with. So normally one of the solutions to this would be util dump back right. So let's say you can get a raise nade here. Great. And then smoke B main so that the pillar player feels a little bit more isolated. Mm-hmm. And then if they are a little bit more isolated, you have a little bit of timing to scale up and then try to get those kills. But it is very difficult because we haven't even talked about hell. We haven't even talked about if they're contesting you close. Like this off angle is insane. This angle is insane too. Like new box is really annoying to deal with.
Yeah.
If there's a player hell and there's a heaven smoke, you're not going to win. So, I mean, the main thing that I would focus, just to generalize, are these three boxes.
Yeah.
B main smoke, back right nade, and then try to isolate pillar a little bit.
Okay.
But
what I'm hearing is you'd rather not play retake B. This is kind of like
I'd definitely
kind of like bind
not.
B.
Yeah, bind B. Oh man, when we get to bind B, it's gonna be, You'd rather die, just a sneak peek into the bind. It's better to die fighting for hookah and be long than it is to fall back to site and play the 5v5 execute.
Yep.
So
okay. All right. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you feel like we need to cover?
One small nuanced detail is because that A lurk is so prominent on attack, right, with the Cypher cages and the Viper wall, you want to address that as soon as you can. So normally you do that in the form of Skydog plus duelist fight with Skydog to kill that guy.
Okay.
And you want him to respect you so he doesn't get all of the pressure.
Got it. Got to assert dominance.
Assert dominance.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks, Adam. This is our second last map. So we're done split. And we've only got one left. We're going to get into bind next. So we're going to do that next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in and hope you have a great week.
Appreciate it.